What's up? What's up? All right, guys, we are live. We'll get started at 3 p.m. Today we're covering land development, land acquisition, land analysis. Pretty much, what you need to do to get started if you're looking at land, analyzing a seller's piece of property. All right, what's up? What's up? If you can hear me, just throw a comment in. And if you guys wanted to hop in and ask a question live, there's a link in Facebook. Let me see if I can grab that. And we can get you live on camera. Here it is. But yeah, but before we get started, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Let's see. Hopefully this works. Let's see. Check, check. Check, check, 1 2 1 2. Let's see. Check, check. All right, cool. Joe Matamone. All right, link not working. All right, let me see. All right, I just posted another link in, Joe. Try this one. This doesn't chat to both. Let's see. I can't see Facebook comments here. That's weird. Some destinations won't get comments. Facebook groups. right, one more minute, guys, and we're going to get started. Facebook groups. Link is not working. Alright, you might have to use it. There's an integration button. This keeps showing up. It's Facebook, though. Alright, hold on. Let me try this. There's an integration that works from Facebook to StreamYard. So try clicking that Facebook link first. StreamYard.com/Facebook. Then that other link should work. I'm sending it out right out from StreamYard right now. And that's the same one that I would send out via email. So that is good because we had other people use it. Alright, we'll give it another minute and then we'll get going. Okay, Heather, the link's not working. Heather, which link did you click? Let's see, maybe I gotta post this somewhere else. Hold on a second. What's up, Anne-Marie? Oh, hold on, there might be... Okay, I posted in my own chat. Hold on a second. You can only see the link from earlier. Okay. Maybe it's because the event started. Let's see. You haven't finished your comment yet. Leave page. Okay, here we go. Weird. Alright, I just posted the previous link, but it's not letting me post in the event for some reason. Let me try one more time. Yeah, here's the stream. Okay, here we go. I had to refresh it. Alright, I just dropped the link in. Let's see if it worked. Oh, maybe I gotta go in the chat. Link in, let's see if it works. Alright, that's why. Maybe I gotta go in the chat. Link in, let's see if it works. Alright, that's why. Let me mute myself there. Boom. Alright guys, yeah, so if you wanted to hop in to ask any questions in studio versus typing, obviously if you're not driving, we can bring you into the studio and we can chat. You know, I can answer any questions that you may have. Today, we're going to be talking about land. Obviously, land is something that most people aren't dealing with day to day. Me and Abram are dealing with it a lot because of working with builders. You know, so if you ever wanted to work with a builder, you know, number one, you better know a little bit of something about land. Number two, you know, you may run into a, you know, potential seller of a property, and they may not know if it's subdividable or not. You know, having just some basic information, which we're going to go over today, you know, you'll be able to learn, you know, what to look for, how to find it really quickly, and then kind of what next steps you would need to take, you know, in order to further analyze a piece of property. It's just one thing for somebody to have something that is potentially subdividable. It's another thing for that property to actually have value once it is subdivided. There's always obviously a cost to doing a subdivision. There's cost to doing utilities, to a property. Sometimes there's restrictions on properties depending on, what year the adjacent properties were built, and what those connections are. So we'll go over something just kind of real quick on what's what. First, I'm going to bring up what the zoning map actually looks like. We're going to use Tom's River's version as an example. All right, guys. So you can see there's all different zones throughout the township of Tom's River. R100, R50, R90, R40A. So R40A. So this is Guilford Park area section of Tom's River. If you guys are not familiar with this section of Tom's River, lots of 40-foot wide lots. So that's why you have those narrow houses being built. A lot of shotgun ranches in that development. There are some 80-foot wide pieces of property in this development, and those can be subdivided. The only thing is you have to take in consideration the size of the existing house that's on the property. Sometimes there's a house sitting right dead center of the lot. And if that's the case, then the house needs to be knocked down. Even if it wasn't sitting dead centered on the lot, you still need your proper setbacks from the existing structure to the new lot line. So you're subdividing, you have a structure, they have to be split equally, or, they each have to have 40 feet in that zone. So you also need a side yard setback. So in that zone, the way to figure out what that side yard setback would be is, let me see, let's stop sharing. So the schedule of minimum zoning requirements. So this, guys, is going to be the key to figuring out what can be built on a lot, whether you're subdividing it or not subdividing it. This also goes for just regular plain lots. So R40A residential, you can see the lot area. Minimum requirement for a lot in that zone is 4,000 square feet. So simple math on that is a 40 by 100. The frontage of that property does differ, though. If you are on a corner lot, the minimums actually change. The reason being is that, guys, on a corner lot, you don't have just a front yard on the front. You have a front yard also on the side. So the side yard, on the street side, you have to comply with the same front yard setbacks as the front yard. So to break down further, guys, the front yard setback, as you can see here, for R40A zone is 20 feet. So not only do you have to be 20 feet off of the front yard, you would have to be 20 feet off of the side yard with any permanent structures. That is also including like 6-foot fencing, sheds, garages, things like that. That has to be taken into consideration, when you are building on a lot, because, now if you've got a 40-foot wide lot and 20 feet is already cut off, and then you also have a side yard setback, which in this zone is 4. So you're going to take 40. If the lot was 40 on a corner, you've got 20 that you got to take off, plus another 4. That leaves 16. That's why you can't build on a 40 by 100 that's on a corner. You'd be left with a 16-foot wide house, which, you're not going to see unless the house was built a long time ago and it was grandfathered in. So that's why you have these different, size requirements for corner properties. So we'll talk about an R75 zone because we're actually building on a lot that was recently subdivided. So the requirements there, 7,500 square feet, typical lot 75 by 100. Now you can get a variance if for some reason it's a 70-foot wide lot, but maybe you have more lot depth. Maybe you're 70 by 110. It is possible to get a variance in that zone. You'd have to apply for a waiver. You'd have to go through some separate meetings through the Zoning Board of Adjustment. but it is possible to do it. What you would want to look for is similar properties in that zone that were recently built on that got approved. And that'll kind of give you the game plan or the map on what that person did in order to get those approvals. So 75 by 100, you can see the setbacks are a little bit different here. It's a 40-foot frontage on a requirement. That's, again, that you can get a variance, obviously. That would be the minimum. The front setback is 25, so the house has to be pushed back 25 feet off of the road. Your rear setback on that in that zone is a 20. Your side yards are 8, so 8, 8, and that brings you to like a 16-foot combined. And then your impervious coverage, guys, is if you take the 7,500 and then you multiply it by 70%, it's going to come out to be like 4,000 and change square footage as far as like what you can actually build on. So impervious coverage, guys, is your house itself. Hardscape, patios. Something just happened. Okay, there. If you do pavers, that's not always taken into consideration. So some towns will count pavers with the coverage. Your beach towns, you got to check. That's very popular, obviously, to have pavers, over on the island. But you'll see for parking reasons, obviously, people put in pavers. They try to pave the whole property, but then that could trap the water. So each town has different zones and regs. Toms River, as far as I know, the pavers are not something that are counted. There are other ways you could actually, park cars without, solid concrete. It's more expensive to do it, but there is, concrete or asphalt that'll actually drain. Way more expensive to use, can be done if you need to do it. Maximum building coverage, 35%. So that's just the house. So your house can't go above 35% coverage on the property. The 70%, again, is your combination of everything. So that's, again, pool, decks, concrete, driveways, asphalt, things like that. All right, so I'll show you guys a subdivision that was done recently. This is a house that we're building in Toms River, 32 Blue Jay. It is listed for sale right now for $799. So you could see this lot was split. This was the corner lot. It was an oversized lot, so they were able to subdivide it, and they were able to comply without really getting any variances for this lot. This lot's actually a little bit deeper than normal. It's 75 by 150. So you're beyond what is standard for a lot in this zone. Again, R75, 75 by 100. Now, keep in mind when you hear these numbers, guys, each town is going to have some different regulations on it, right? An R75 in Toms River may be different than an R75 in like Homedale. Different regulations, but Toms River's made it pretty easy to read through your zoning guidelines and understand, most of the, lot depths and lot frontages. They're pretty standard across the board, except for when you get to the acreage, which is like the North Dover area. Let's see. Somebody just had a question. Hold on. I was wondering what was Blue Jay. What was going on, Blue Jay? I live down the street from there. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful house. Yes, it is. Our typical Whittington model. 2 stories, basement. I think it's 2,800 square feet. So, guys, tax records. So this is where you can kind of start your research. So this property is not showing, absolutely correct right now. It is still showing the original address, which is 23 Cardinal. The subdivided lot was 32 Blue Jay, so not showing up yet. It's not subdivided in the tax map system yet. It is by the town. The town obviously approved it. We're building on it already, so it is subdivided. But what you're looking for is location information. Not sure if you guys can see it or not, but zoning. It says 90. So the 90 zone I'll go back to, let's see. So zoning for 9,000. Okay, I was incorrect. I said R75. 9,000 square feet is the lot requirement, 75 frontage, 120 depth. So we actually have 150 depth there. So, we're oversized for that zone. Let me just bring it back up. So yeah, in the tax records, guys, too, there's a way, obviously, you can drop in on the lot. If you guys are familiar with your tax records, there's also a measuring tool to kind of show what your lot size is. Let me do a screen share and I can show you how it works. Let's go to Flex. All right, so you're hitting the realist tax info, which I think this one isn't connected yet, so we'll have to do it manually. So manually, you have to hit launch relist. So not everything is connected in the tax records, guys, but you can still do a search. For some reason, that just pulled up a bunch of stuff in brick. So what you have to do is kind of just drop in on the property. There we go. So yeah, you're seeing here, this property is not showing up as subdivided yet. And it's actually not even accurate because this actually is 2 parcels. Let me drop the satellite so you can see it. Yeah. So this parcel for some reason isn't connected. It's not showing up. But you can see your 158 on frontage. So that allows you to cleanly subdivide this into 2. You use 75 feet, and 75 feet is how they split it. Or actually the front house might have gotten an extra 8 feet. This isn't always 100% accurate, but again, this gives you guys something to look at real quick and start research, just through Realist. That would lead me to believe that this adjacent property, for whatever reason, it's not letting me tag into it, that this property may be also able to subdivide this piece off too. This is actually probably less frontage here, but they have more depth that they can use. This other property was subdivided this way. You could see if they had to subdivide it, the same way, the house sits right in the center. So the house would have to be knocked down if the only way to subdivide this property was off a Blue Jay. So traditionally speaking, values of land, it rarely exceeds, obviously, a double lot, what the house cost is. It does happen sometimes where you see a house and you're like, yeah, just knocking down that house and building two new houses is the way to go. In older sections of town, maybe, Guilford Park is an example. If it's an old bungalow, doesn't make sense to fix the house up, then the land value can actually exceed the lot value. But with land value, guys, comes more cost, comes more process, comes time. Your client has to be pretty savvy, and or they have to hire an engineer in order to subdivide a property. It isn't something that you're just going to go to a township meeting and be able to accomplish. Yeah, there's a lot more to it. Procedure-wise, I'd say to get a subdivision, you're looking at probably a year to 2 years. And that's all going to depend on what agency approvals you will need. So there's a lot more to it than just looking at a lot and saying, yeah, it meets the size requirements, because in New Jersey, especially where we're at by the coast, there's other regulations. So a lot of properties you've got to go through something called a CAFR approval. CAFR approvals are another layer that is beyond the township. So the township may look at the lot. They may say that this lot is able to be divided into 2 lots or into a whole community. But still, you may need CAFR approvals, which is state approvals, which traditionally take, for a single lot, you might be able to get something done in 6 to 8 months. For a subdivision, you could be looking at a year, and that's without them requiring any changes. So you could actually do a full concept plan. You can go through engineering. You could actually sit in front of the town. The town could actually approve it, just contingent upon receiving CAFR approvals. And CAFR could actually, knock down, what you're looking to do. Some other things that you have to consider are wetlands. Let's go back to the screen share. And what I can do is show you guys how to find it on Realist if you haven't done it yet. So here's just traditional map. imagery parcels. Let's see. Alright guys, so as you see, it's not showing what the classification of wetlands is on here. Actually, this is just showing flood zones. Where's the wetlands button? That used to be there. Okay. Let me see. There's another trick for wetlands. It's called the GIS, Tom's River GIS. Let me bring that up real quick. Let's see. All right, so the GIS site, guys, this shows actually the DEP wetlands. And because of wetlands, certain lots, like let's zoom in here. So Raider Way, you could see certain lots we actually have shown traditionally that there's wetlands. Now, that doesn't mean you can't build there. Actually, on these lots that I'm showing here, this is actually land that our builder built on. So what you need to do is something called a wetlands delineation. So that's another engineering process, and what they do is they'll actually go out to the property and determine if there's actually wetlands on the lot. So they determined on these lots that there was actually no wetlands. At one point, could have been possible that there was wetlands, but New Jersey, doesn't always update their maps. Obviously, the wetlands could have been there back in the 70s, and it dried up at one point. As you can see, a lot of High School East in Toms River considered wetlands. This area I know is definitely not buildable. This is the Goose Creek area. This is overflow from the Goose Creek, right from the lagoon area over by Fisher. This area traditionally floods. It's just a low point. It's where obviously water accumulates. The streets are higher. These properties are obviously higher. But this will actually show you guys if you're just looking at a regular map. If you're looking at flood zones, not all this pops up. Again, this is property on Windsor Avenue that hasn't been, built on. As you can see, this is probably why. You have wetlands being shown here. You also have something, that you can show on the GIS map, easements. So easements here, this is probably a storm drain easement. You can see it's actually running right through this house. So under this house is a storm drain that is draining from the streets into the lagoon. You can see another one right here. So this is all good to know, because if you're looking at subdividing a property or doing something with a property that it's not always possible. This is an area here. They're showing an easement. I'm not sure exactly what that is. That might be another sewer line or just another drain line going into the lagoons, but you'll see these a lot of times on these lagoon front properties, where it goes pretty much in between these two property lines. There's an easement on each side. Now, if you don't have a survey, obviously, you might not be able to pick that up off of a listing. A lot of listing agents don't know that there's easements. A lot of sellers don't disclose that there's easements. You will find out when a survey gets done on that property, and if you were looking to do something such as a subdivision, that actually takes into account, like this easement here. If you were to buy this property, guess what? There's probably a 10-foot easement on each side. So if you were to, want to subdivide or something, you cannot build over this new easement. They won't let you anymore. In the past, I guess, they allowed you to do it. I'm not sure how accurate this is, if this house is actually sitting on it or if it's actually set back. But all things that, you can kind of look at this GIS map and just discover different things, different questions to ask. It'll, potentially save you and your client some time in the process, being able to use these tools. And the GIS map, guys, does work for the majority of the state. Toms River did a really good job at updating all their data in here. So I believe they actually have sewer and well and things like that built in. So you can see like where your sewer lines are. One thing to consider, I'll show you guys a property that we built a while ago. Let me see. Yeah, so one thing to consider is even if sewer's in the street, that doesn't always mean that you can just connect and you're done. There's a property that we actually built. Let's see, where is it? On Royal. All right, so Royal, you have existing houses. You've got houses all the way down Royal. We ended up building one of these houses, I think 183. And you would just assume, if it's the first time that you're building, or that you just don't know what you're doing, that you can just connect sewer right in front of your house. And that's not always the case. The township actually makes the decision on where you actually connect your sewer. So with this property, it was vacant. There was no house on it, so that's the key. If there was a house on it and there was an existing sewer line, you would have been fine. And or if there was an existing sewer lateral on the property, which is a sewer line, from onto the property, into the street. That's a question you can ask. If there's a piece of land, you can ask if there was any sewer or water laterals on the property. Sometimes there's gas lines on the property. That could be it's usually because a house was knocked down, or it was part of a subdivision and the lot was never built on. Very rarely will you find a piece of property that's fully wooded that has a sewer lateral, a water lateral, or any other utilities on it. But just keep in mind that is something that you can ask. Most other agents may not know the answer to it, but you have to ask. So the problem with this property was that they wanted us to connect to the main sewer pretty much in front of 187. Now, the bigger problem is that in certain areas, the sewer lines are, at different depths in the street. This street, it just happened to be 15 feet below the street. Obviously, this is a waterfront area, so what happens when you get 15 feet below the street, it requires something called dewatering. So what dewatering is pretty much means that obviously when you dig down, you're probably going down maybe 7 or 8 feet, and then you're hitting nothing but water. So how are you installing a sewer line, all the way down the street? You got to trench the whole street and connect to the main sewer line there when there's water being flooded, in that trench that you want to build. So the cost for the dewatering on this project was $30,000. That was not to just install the line. The line's separate. You have to pay brick. I think it's like $15,000 to install water and sewer laterals onto your property. That's just what you pay the township. On top of it, you were actually, paying a plumber or an excavator to actually, dig your trench and install your lines. So on this one, it was $30,000 extra to do this dewatering. And that allows you to, you have to pretty much get a pump and, pump the water out so that you can actually do the work. So there's a lot of intricate things, about land. That was just something that just popped into my head as I'm looking at, different things. All right, let's see. Question. Is wetland also tidelands? So tidelands is different. Tidelands can feed into wetlands. It doesn't always mean that wetlands is tidelands. So let me go back to maybe a map and show an example of that. So wetlands can be tidal as far as the way they overflow. But there's certain areas. Let me do a screen share. Was I screen sharing before, guys, when I was showing Royal? If not, my bad. So if I wasn't, 183 was the lot, and we had to hook up like 100 feet down the street. Doesn't sound like a lot, but again, enough to cause a problem. So tidelands are your tidal, waters, but they do connect to wetlands sometimes. Not every portion of wetlands is considered a tideland. So you have areas that are just low lying. You'll actually have like wetlands and like farm areas and stuff. Let's see. Yeah, it's not showing wetlands, guys. It's just showing just the flood map. But like you could have areas here that you could see that are off a creek, that aren't tidal. Like this isn't a tidal creek. This is just kind of overflow. So this could actually accumulate water from like rainstorms. And what that does is that feeds to different areas. Usually it's other low-lying points. And those could be considered wetlands because if they are retaining water, they're actually going to be, an issue to build on. The townships in the county and the state, they should have records of these areas, that are wetlands. Sometimes they don't, though. A lot of times you can tell by just the kind of plant growth on that property. So if you're seeing low-lying areas, if you're seeing like mud, if you're seeing any cattails, if you're seeing moss, things like that, those could be considered areas that could come up as wetlands and would come up in a wetlands delineation study. So if your property's buffering to any kind of creeks or anything like that, just because what you see on the map on the MLS or in the GIS, that doesn't actually mean that that's what the current status of that property is. Because what happens is over time, those waterways can change, they can move. So they're not always 100% up to date. So that's why you'd need like a wetlands delineation study on anything that's a zoning or buffering either wetlands or any kind of tidal lands before you build. If the property's already built on, you're fine. If you go to do some kind of addition or you want to put in a pool or something like that, any new structure, they may require you to go back and get a new survey done and a wetlands delineation study in order to determine, where your buffering is. Buffering off of wetlands changes depending on the classification of the waterway. So if it is a creek that's non-tidal, you may actually be good with like a 50 to 100 foot buffer off that property or off that wetlands area. If it's a tidal creek, I think the number is like 200 or 300 feet off of it. So if you have some kind of tidal water in the back of your property and the back of your property is also low-lying and it actually, will flood out or take on water, that cuts a lot of the property down. So if you guys see a lot of, properties on big acreage, pieces even out in like Plumstead, Jackson, things like that, there's a lot of creeks out there. Look at the wetlands on the back of the property, and I can assure you that most times they will have some buffering rules on them. Oh, look, Mr. Abe wants to join us. Abe, did you want to hop on? What's up, fella?
I don't know, just logging.
Oh, just logging in. So Abe, we will hit something on flood zones at some point. I know you're the expert, and you want to probably talk about flood zones at some point. I think we'll probably do a full separate session on that.
Yeah.
But anything that I missed on land that you want to point out, I'll keep going after. But
I don't think so, man. You've been pretty much covering most of it. How do I log it? How do I don't want to. I wasn't sure.
You all right over there?
No, obviously I wanted to just watch your little cast here. I kind of jumped in late.
Oh, no problem. Oh, you just jumped in.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I thought you just jumped in here and you were listening on Facebook. All right. I have a creek at the back corner of my property and I have a buffer. Who is this? Patricia. All right, let's look up Patricia's property, if that's okay. Maybe she doesn't want everybody to know where she lives. But anybody can find her. So I'm going to do it anyway. Let's see. Let's see. The Flokowskis. Fieldcrest. Boom. Oh, yeah, you can see it. So, guys, let's see. Let me share screen. All right, so this is out in New Egypt. So this is kind of what I was just talking about. There's a lot of creeks out in New Egypt. Oh, it's actually just showing it where to go. Do I gotta zoom out? Hold on a second. Let's zoom back in. Let's see, Fieldcrest. That's weird. It actually, right before I went to that, it was showing. All right, so here's Fieldcrest, so you could see this creek, but yeah, the way to tell it, guys, is you can kind of see this line running through the trees. So if you're ever looking on a map and you're zoomed out, and you see like there's just a gap, it's kind of like just missing trees, and it looks like a line. Like that's 9 times out of 10, this is a creek. So the first thing that should hit your mind is water, right? So this is obviously you could see without this water being here, this was all probably, could have been buildable land. So you could see this is zoned as A. So this is probably just a creek. It's probably not tidal in nature, but it can accumulate water. So there's areas in like Howell that have really flooded out, just based on some overflow creeks and, some natural creeks, just from rainfall. So obviously they don't want you building, and they also want a buffer. So you can see there's a buffer on top of this with where these houses are. Now, it looks like these houses here kind of are right on the buffer. You could see this guy put like a deck and a patio there, but you can see it looks like this line right here is probably the buffer off of the creek as far as where you can build. If you zoom out, you can see how far it goes. Yeah. And you can see some of these areas, these are probably older properties, because obviously as the years go on, these floodwaters, seem to be getting worse. And a lot of that is because of development and overdevelopment, and because there wasn't enough retention. All the subdivisions that we're doing now, you have to put in like a retention basin. If you guys don't know what a retention basin is, let's see. So this is an example of stormwater retention basin. And what they want you to do is they want each development that you build that's new construction, they want you to manage your own water. And what that means is that this water cannot go into the main sewer lines, or this can't be sent out to the town to deal with. The town wants you to maintain your water, and then the way this works is like for the most part, and this is something I actually have to look into more. This is a dry basin, so this actually it's a sand bottom. It has to clear out within 24 hours. It's got to be dry within 24 hours, even in the worst storms. So that's something before they actually will let you get approved and take you off bond with the township. This has to be fully functioning and working. Not every basin is like that. There are some basins that do hold water, but the majority of them are the ones that they want drained. So, and that would be a builder requirement on a subdivision. Traditionally speaking, if you're talking about, just a basic subdivision, 2-lot subdivision, you're not going to need something like that, unless you're in like a specific zone, I guess that would require it. But I haven't seen it on like a small subdivision. What else? What other questions do you guys have about land? Show you real quick. So this is an example of a tax map. So the tax map gives you something that the zoning map, doesn't in the whole the zoning map for the township. This will actually give you the individual lots. You know, so this is what you guys can pull from Rarelist. You know, there's a assessor map link, and this will pop up, and it'll show all the different lots, you know, in your zone, and you can kind of see what's next to you, what the lot sizes are, how they're all split up, and a lot of times the easements are actually, they show up on here too. So like I was talking about the, you know, easements in the waterfront areas where they have drains and stuff going into the lagoons, those should show up on these assessor maps. Yeah, let's see. Let me stop the share. Let's see, what else about land can I tell you guys about? Topography. Very important. So, guys, topography is the grading of a lot. If you're dealing with a piece of land that isn't flat, you can have some issues with topography. So, topography, let's say, for example, on like we have lots in rolling hills. Some of the lots in there have to be walkout basements. We've done, actually, let's use rolling hills as an example. Let me pull it up. Let me see if I could show you the map instead. So in that subdivision, it's pretty tricky. I don't know if we could see it from here. Yeah, this is the site plan. So there's a creek actually that runs through this property. That's why you're seeing a lot of this area being buffered. All this green, you know, wooded area. A lot of that's because there's a creek that's running through this property. So they actually had to build like a bridge, number one, to get to the back of the development. That's why you see 6 homes on the front and then a big gap with a big retention area and then, you know, a bunch of houses, 8 homes on the back. It's because of the creek. The buffering on the back of that property, I believe, was 200 feet. So 2443, I don't know if you guys can see the addresses, but 2443, 2441, 2439, those all have buffers on the back of those properties where you cannot clear, you can't do anything. You know, so that isn't just, you know, where like the builder can't, you know, clear. Sometimes there's lots that we build on and, you know, we just can't clear. The township won't let us clear the entire lot. This is a conservation easement. So that means that the next buyer of that property, they can't clear that either legally. Now, do people do it? 100% they do it. But it's not, you know, it's not legal to do so. You can get fined. Some people just look at the fine and they say it's worth it. If I can clear this and I get fined $20,000, I'll deal with it, obviously. They may make you plant trees, you know, which is fine. All you can do really in a conservation easement is clean it up. So if there's underbrush, if there's fallen trees, things like that, you can actually clean that property up. You can plant grass, but you are restricted from doing anything as far as sheds or pools or patios or anything within that zone. So with that too, with this lot, let me show you guys something. I'll show you guys a lot that we built that has had some grading issues. Okay. So it's 2446, but those pictures are actually of another house that we built. No, let's see, 2439 should have the pictures. Let's try again. There we go. Oh, no, still not the right one. Anyways, guys, so in this development, there's a couple of houses that needed 2448. Let's give it one more shot. Sorry, guys. No, old pictures. All right. So there's lots in this subdivision that needed retaining walls. So retaining walls are super expensive to do. Did we do one on 2448? this one we didn't. So 2438, guys, is available. Nope. This is all the other pictures too. Abe, do you know if we have any pictures of Curry's house on MLS or no? Abe's not here anymore, guys. Oh, good. I'm sure you guys all know what a retaining wall is, but with retaining walls, there comes an extra expense, and that expense, you could pay $20,000 to $30,000 for a retaining wall. So that is something that you have to take into consideration if you're dealing with a lot that is not flat. Even if it is somewhat flat, you may need to do a retaining wall so that you're not flooding out your neighbors. Another thing that's being done in most towns is they're requiring you to manage your own water. So we're having to install what they call as dry wells on the back of the properties. And what you do is you boot your gutters and leaders to the back of the property, and it's a trench, with rocks in it. They don't want that water going out to the street. They don't want that water going and flooding out your neighbor's property because you improve the property that, was retaining water or was holding water. So that's not something else to consider when you are building. Let's see, a question. On average, how much do taxes go up on new construction? So, I mean, they don't technically, just go up. It really depends on what you build there. So you could be paying $3,000 or $4,000 in taxes on a piece of property you decide to build. What they usually do in the town is they take what your total value is or sales price of the property, and it's not always technically the sales price. It's usually something close to it. In a lot of towns, what they'll do is they'll assess you at like 80 to 85% of whatever the value of that property is. So let's just say you build something and it's $1 million. They're going to assess you combined around $800,000 to $850,000. And then what you have to do is figure out like what that tax rate is for the town. So if the tax rate is $2, you'd be paying $16,000 to $17,000 in taxes on that property. So that's not an exact science. Each town may have a different assessment ratio on what they're doing. You'd actually have to call the town. What I always recommend is the buyer's mortgage broker do it, because the buyer's mortgage broker needs to figure this out in order to get them approved for the loan. And some mortgage companies have different requirements. They may want to hold 100% of the assessment ratio until the town actually determines what the taxes are going to be. Because sometimes you won't get a tax increase for 6 months to a year. It takes a while for the town to come out and do their, do their evaluation and then determine what your taxes are going to be. But in the interim, the mortgage company wants to make sure that the taxes are being paid and or they're being escrowed. So, it depends on really the mortgage company and what they want to do. If they say that they want a higher ratio for whatever reason, that's their requirement. They should call the township though, and they should ask the township, what, how they're factoring it in, and then they can make the determination. That really just gets you guys out of that question, and then, you don't have to worry about, telling a client something and then it becomes something else. Because again, they have to determine that anyway for them to close on a loan and to qualify for the loan. They're not going to take into consideration $3,000 in taxes of what it used to be for just land, and then just say, oh yeah, no, we'll just qualify you based on that. We know it's going to go up. Well, that could affect what a buyer can afford. So they're going to determine, they're going to know that the taxes are going to go up. They're going to take that into consideration, and as far as what you can qualify for, and then whether they escrow it or not. I've had some clients close, and the mortgage company didn't escrow it, and then the buyer just had to save up money themselves, and then just pay once that bill comes out, in full. So it just really depends on the mortgage company. Anybody else have any questions? Hey Tom, you want to jump in and add anything, or are you good? Tommy's good. Let me see. What else can I think of while we're here? Bum, bum, bum. Oh, so for wetlands, they don't always get determined just by the state. The township actually can classify something as wetlands too. So it may not show up on the New Jersey DEP map, but the township may classify it as wetlands, and they may do what they call an overlay and put an easement on the property because they're classifying it as wetlands. Even if they don't do like a wetlands delineation, if they know that that property accumulates water, they could classify it as wetlands and put an easement on your property. So keep that in mind too. I've heard of some pieces of property being sold, and it was all wetlands. It happens, guys. I've heard of properties being sold that they couldn't get connections for sewer because the either township or the county had a moratorium on opening the road to connect to sewer, and because it also was in an area that had wetlands, and it was saturated, they couldn't put septic. So what that means is you've got a dead piece of property that you can't do anything with. So it's just, it's money lost, so I guess this is something we could talk about. So, for property guys, if you're putting together a deal, right, you're not an expert on land, but, I'm hopefully giving you some information to kind of help push people in the right direction. You're going to build in a due diligence period, for any land acquisition. What you do normally, traditionally, is you could put in like a 60-day due diligence. If it's complex. Sometimes if it's like a traditional lot and it seems like, hey, it should be fine, it's a buildable lot per the township, no easements are showing up, you might be able to do enough due diligence in 30 days. It just really depends on how quick your engineer is. So what you have to do is do either a phase 1 or a phase 2 engineering study. And what they'll do is, even if a house was never on that property, that doesn't mean that property is clean. So you could have issues where maybe an oil tank was below ground on that property and or was buried on that property, and or property adjacent leaked oil at some point and it was never cleaned up. Those are all things that have a negative impact on your land. If it's a property that doesn't have public water, you're going to have to do some analysis to see how deep you have to go to get a well. Sometimes it's 150 to 200 feet deep. You have to take that in consideration, because that's obviously an extra cost if there is no public water connections. Some other things, if you're building near the water, you want to do an analysis on how far you have to go with pilings. So there's an impact study that gets done, and that could tell you that you need pilings or you don't. Sometimes you need a 20-foot piling times 50 pilings in order to build on that lot. Because the water table in that area. That's something that could be figured out during due diligence. If you're looking at commercial property, which we're going to cover another day, same thing. You're going to want to do due diligence on what the zoning allows, what the uses are based upon that zoning for the township, and then you could have some meetings with the town on what your intentions are, with the engineer before you apply formally, and get a pretty much determination from the town as far as what they are going to allow you to do or what they may have questions about you doing. So these are all things that you'd have to actually pay an engineer to do some initial due diligence. I'd say probably a phase 1 environmental probably is anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000 right now, and to do like a conceptual plot plan. So a plot plan would be kind of what I showed you. I'll show you guys again. So this is a plot plan. So this is a final plot plan. So this one was approved to build on, but it shows the 2 lots, the old house, the one the one that got subdivided, and the new one to be built. So to do a conceptual plot plan, this probably would cost probably like $1,200 to $2,000, depending on the property. So you could see this has a bunch of fine print, but you could see they did all their environmental studies, soil erosion, sediment control. So soil erosion is pretty much just, you're putting up some barriers to make sure that, when you're moving dirt, And if it happens to rain, that rain isn't going to wash away that dirt either into your neighbor's property and or into the sewer lines, because that's not good for anybody. So you have to control, your own soil and erosion. You also need approvals through the county for soils. That's a process, within itself too. Again, something that an engineer, would help you to do. But yeah, I mean, all these different things. This is kind of why, you need to know enough, I guess, to put a deal together, but also to know that there's a lot of things that actually have to go right in order for that property to be buildable. So if you have somebody that is looking to buy land or looking to subdivide land, it is a lengthy process. Not saying that it can't be done; it gets done all day, every day. But don't assume that like you can close on a property in 60 days because it looks good, or because somebody built next door, 20 years ago. Zoning changes, the zoning maps change. So over the years, there's different regulations and restrictions that pop up. So you're going to just share the information, with your clients, but you're also going to recommend that they talk to their attorney and that they hire an engineer before their due diligence period is over. I'm going to bring up Tommy Z. He's got a few things to say.
You caught me mid. Can you? Am I echoing?
You're good. I mean, we got to get you a mic, but you're good enough for the crowd.
All right. Well, I'm not good. I just wanted to on something about the town planners. There are a lot more than you think. Set up meetings with them. We did it with the firehouse preliminary meeting. What can be built? So waste of time. I was daycare on Riversville, and the value was. And they said it wasn't home, but they already said we're not anything from the zoning there. So we had to have the 12 spots. That's how it was understood, and whatever you just did, that fixed it. But that really, you muted me. You muted everyone. You muted. So that helped to let the buyers understand. We're not going to take a long due diligence period for you trying to see if you can fit 30, 40 townhouses on there. It's just going to be subdivision, and that's it. So township planners, definitely willing to talk to you and tell you about what you want with the land use. Because if you're listing this property, the more information you get out there, the more valuable it's going to get. Because the biggest issue with investors and builders is not knowing what they can do with it. Just uncertainty with it. So that's all I wanted to add. That they're very helpful. That was Brick when I talked to. So I'm sure Bo and Abe have done the same thing with other planners in other towns and whatnot. So that's it.
Yeah. So guys, I mean that's something where you would have wanted to sit down with an engineer most likely at that point, unless you're just going to figure out like what the land use is. A lot of times, if you look at the land use, what your client may want to do may be not so clear based upon how the township actually classifies it. So, for example, in Tom's case, I think with Herbertsville, it was a daycare formerly. It was zoned for that. What did they want to put there? Didn't they want to put apartments?
Yeah, it was multi-family zones. That's what you guys had on. And I already know the mayor was squashing any multi-family zones. So, God, I think there was some issue. It was some issue with the bulk variant, or not the bulk variant, the amount of acreage in order to do it would have been a variance, but because of that, they were not a well. So that was their way of saying because you don't fit exactly what the needs are. We are not going with the family zones.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, that's really up to the township as far as how they feel about it too, right? Because they could approve you on certain things. They have the ability to take a vote, and have the ability obviously to hear from the township. But I could tell you, I know in that area, because it is Herbertsville and because like Sawmill and Maple Leaf is such an issue, they probably felt like we don't want to put something that could be more of an issue in that area. It's kind of adding gas to the fire. That's probably the area which receives the most complaints in town, for police and ambulance and stuff like that. So they probably felt like the township won't like us, and that's really the politician's job, right? Is they can determine certain things. But when you're building on like a brick boulevard, certain thing like they changed the zoning next to where the Burlington Coat Factory is. And there's a gym over there too, I think, in the Stop and Shop. So on the south side of Brick, there's a big apartment complex that was built, and that was not zoned for that originally. That had some issues with it, but the township was fine with it because they felt like, well, it's not really impacting any of the residential neighborhoods because it was in between Old Hooper, it was in between Brick Boulevard. It wasn't going to cause any more traffic than there already is in that zone. So they look at all those different things and factors before determining if they want to allow you to build in a zone that isn't clear about what you can build there.
Yeah, good point. Can you hear me?
Yep.
The mayor actually the property is across from Maple Leaf Park, so we're going to put a recreational playground or something. I talked about police substation, but they didn't want to go for it. So they almost lost 3 acres month. But good point, Bob.
Yeah, and really, it's and that's why you want to possibly sit down, right? Instead of going through all the engineering and going through all this planning and hiring an architect and doing all these things that are going to cost money, sitting down with the township, and what they usually do is they bring out all their officials that would play a part in making a decision on that property. So it is the planning and zoning, it is code enforcement, it is fire, it is building. So all the players are usually involved in that meeting, and there's a small cost, I think, for it. Do you remember how much it was, Tommy?
Actually, no, free. I had
It's free in Brick.
Yeah, the guy I was in council with was part of the meeting, so he got free.
Gotcha.
No, I don't think it was just exploratory. You're just asking for one people there. The big ones, I had the firehouse. They cost money.
Yeah.
And one people they usually have.
Yeah, but again, at that point, you're hiring engineers. They're kind of walking in knowing that, we may have to horse trade a little bit with the township. We're gonna show them, this is what we should get approved for, and they're gonna maximize, their building square footage and their improvement on the site. Knowing that the township may say, well, we want more trees, we want more of a buffer, we want 8-foot, privacy fencing. Like the township's always gonna try to do things to appease the neighbors and make sure that the site doesn't get 100% just kind of cleared. They like to leave trees and grassy areas, because that's kind of where they get complaints from different people. Oh, they're just cutting down all the trees in town, and even though it's their property and they typically have the right to do it. Usually you horse trade and maybe you say, all right, I'm going to leave a 25-foot buffer around the property in between my property and the next property, which will leave, some green zone, I guess, for either animals or whatever, the raccoons, the squirrels, the birds, just
to hit on your point, where
I know where you're going to go.
You're going to say red-tailed hawk.
The red-tailed hawk.
So the subdivision that we did there, it was a historic 50-foot buffer between the two residential zones, which has never happened. There's long-standing agreement. They said that this land can never be developed. The firehouse, they said they deeded the property to the firehouse only for training usage, but there was never anything in writing, never anything put on the deed. So the neighbors were upset that there was nothing ever in concrete. So the town was essentially just a negotiator. They were just trying to make all sides happy. Builder, will you do this? Homeowners, will you be happy with that? There's nothing legally they have to do, but let's do this extra buffer. That way you really still have this big, huge property in the backyard that you feel like you had all this time. So that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah, guys, and also the zoning regs that I showed before too, like pretty much everything that you need to know about maybe building a garage on a single family property or doing a pool. That's all there too. I'll just jump back into there so you guys can see it. So if you look at the look at rear setback or look at side yard setback, PN is principal. So that is your building, your house or your commercial building. AC is accessory. So accessory is a shed, accessory is a garage, accessory is a pole barn. Pretty much that isn't the principal residence of the property. PL is pool. So if you look at, your R90 zone and your rear setback and your side setback, the rear setback, you can see the principal setback on the rear is 30. So that's your house. So you got to be 30 feet off the rear lot, right? You can't be 15 feet off of, the back of your neighbor's property. 15 foot for accessory, so you can have a garage or a shed over 120 square feet. That's 15 feet off. Typically speaking, you don't need a permit, for a shed that's under 120 feet, and you can go like right to the lot line. For a pool, 10 feet rear setback in R90 zone, 10 feet side yard setback. So if you're looking at a piece of property, and let's just say it's 100 by 100, and you know that the house is set back 30 feet off the property, and the house is 40 feet in depth, that's 70 feet, you've got 30 feet to work with. Well, you also need to have a buffer off of the house and the pool. I think it's probably 10 feet from the house to the pool. Then you need the width of the pool. And then you obviously have the rear setback. So that probably leaves room for maybe a 16-foot wide pool. So again, it's all math. It's all, pretty much you could actually look at the property and get a good sense of kind of where it stands. If you guys go into, let's see, let me show you a cool little trick. I was doing this with Vince the other day. So if you go into Realist, let's go to Patricia's house. Look at this beautiful house. And you could see, she's got, it looks like a fence right there. You hit this button here. This is a ruler. This is a measuring tool. And you can click this, and boom. I just measured her fence. You hit this dot in the middle. 75-foot fence in depth. So you could obviously do this all around the property. So you could do this, with the neighboring property. You can do it on any property. If you're trying to figure out the size of the lot, or the setback from the lot, or figure out maybe, hey, the house is there, right? So let me do, why is my thing popping up? Maybe because I'm screen sharing. Usually this lets me do multiple. Hold on. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, so you can get your width, 152. And you can see this is probably not, able to be cleared on the back of Patricia's property. And now if you want to say, let's go off of the deck, go to the back of the fence, I've got 49 feet. So she wouldn't have that buffering. Let's just say a neighbor was here, obviously, and this was the lot line. You'd have to be 10 foot off the lot line. So you'd be left with, let's see, 10 feet on this side, 10 feet, 20 feet. So you could do a 29-foot, wide pool in width. And then obviously you can run the length out here probably to 10 feet in the side yards too. So, I mean, you could do a massive pool on this property. So this is something where if you guys are looking at, obviously smaller lots, this would probably be way more important because anybody's going to look at these big lots and say, well, yeah, I can do whatever I want with the big lots. But, when you get down to these 75 by 100 lots, and you're trying to figure out like, oh, can I do a pool? Like, like let's just say in this house right here, because they have this roof line here, that's going to impact where they can build. Let's see, 33 feet off the back of that property. And the problem also with waterfront land is with bulkheads, you have what they call tiebacks. Tiebacks are metal rods that pretty much, they get installed on your bulkhead and they get dug into your property laterally. So usually that's why you never see a pool. Number one, obviously because of the water table, but number two, because you have these tiebacks. They come back towards your property or towards the house on a 45-degree angle. So probably over the first 10 feet, like you couldn't even touch, because your pool would impact your tieback. Let's see. So if you wanted to measure like how far this pool is off of this bulkhead, and there's lots of different ways to do it. Yeah, that's 10 feet off the bulkhead. So that's probably the maximum you can go. There's a lot of different ways to do your bulkheads. That's the most traditional way to do it. It's the cheapest way to do it. Like this one, let's see. Yeah, that's 12 feet off the bulkhead. So you can use this tool when you're looking at a piece of property to determine, if there's enough room. Obviously, how deep the pool is and all that other fun stuff. I mean, you don't necessarily want to get caught up in, exactly what you can do. But when people say, do I have the space? Yeah, it would appear you have the space. Let me share with you a screenshot of, they didn't have a survey, so I can do a quick little screenshot of what the back of the patio is, the back of the lot line, and then we can kind of do the math and determine by the times of rezoning, what your minimum setbacks are off the back of the property and rear of the property. And, you can start to sketch this stuff out. I've done this for many sellers and for many buyers, but I always have a caveat of, you have to, get approval. You got to speak to a pool guy. You got to speak to an engineer. I can't guarantee you this stuff. But, these are the tools that are available to you guys. This is the information that's available, so you can go deeper and, if somebody has a question, on your research. But, yeah, I guess that's it, guys. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post them now. Otherwise, we will wrap up. Anything else you think to add, Tommy, or are you good?
I think we're good, man. You're an efficient man.
Yeah, I know I talk fast, guys, and I know we kind of covered a lot of different things. I mean, I just kind of want to just show you what's out there, what's available tool-wise, and, that way you guys can kind of start figuring things out, right? Doesn't mean you can't ask me a question now because we went through all this, and I'm not going to say go back and watch the Zoom. I mean, there's so much more detail to this, but, just wanted to share kind of really quick, just high level, the different things you have to analyze, different things you have to look at, different things you have to consider, so that way you can start your process of, analysis on any piece of land. But all right, guys, we're going to end it here. And, if you guys have anything else that you guys want to talk about on future sessions, let me know. I know we're going to cover commercial. We're going to cover, flood zones at some point. We'll cover specifically waterfronts, things like that. But, if I get feedback that you guys want to cover some other things, just share with me what you want to cover. This is your meeting. And I just, I don't want to just ramble on about things that you guys don't care about. Let me know. All right, guys. Have a great day.